What is actually your number one enemy as you're starting your day? Well, my guest today, Dave Reggina, would argue it's the snooze button. His entire concept, his entire philosophy is around no snooze. In fact, he has 200 episodes recorded of a no snooze podcast that he's put out that's streamed in 75 countries. They have 40,000 followers on Instagram. And he's built this philosophy around just do the work. And the first thing means you don't hit that snooze button. You start your day when your day should start. As importantly, this conversation goes all over the place in the best of ways. We're going to talk about men's health and men's mental health and why we don't talk about our mental health and how to get help if you need it. We talk about discipline, talk about being a single parent, what that means, talk about serving your community. He's actually in a leadership position within the county in which he lives in New York. And we just talk about how to be a better person. Dave is just one of the most genuine guys, and you can tell that he's been there, done that. He did not grow up in an idyllic situation, but he's turned all of those trials and tribulations into just a wonderful life so that he can inspire others. This one is really special. I have the pleasure of speaking with Dave Reggina, and he's a testament to resilience and determination, rising above personal and professional challenges to become a prominent leader and motivator from the age of literally 16. Dave has battled Crohn's disease and a struggle that has taught him the importance of health and perseverance, and his dedication to tailoring a healthy diet ultimately led him to full remission, which is just absolutely fantastic. And it's a victory that underscores his relentless spirit. You know, Dave's early life was marked by additional adversity with his mother's addiction to drugs and alcohol, affecting him deeply for the first 28 years of his life. And despite these challenges, he forged the path of success and leadership, and in 2019 was recognized as one of the top business professionals in the prestigious 30 Under 30. At a remarkable young age of 28, Dave was appointed the youngest commissioner in New York State, a role in which he demonstrated exceptional leadership and vision, and he continues to serve his community with dedication as the current deputy commissioner. Without further ado, Dave, welcome to the ThriveMore Show.
Roger, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to get into this today. I love the platform, love what you guys are doing. And just from our brief conversation off air, everything is in extreme alignment, which is something that I really pride myself in when I take interviews and opportunities. Any opportunity I have to tell my story, to encourage someone, to inspire someone, that's what we're here to do. And I know you're here to do the exact same thing. So thank you so much for having me on. And thank you to Claudio and Becca for making this happen.
Fantastic. I think the listeners are in for a treat. They really are. You have, and you've got a very successful podcast, the No Snooze podcast, but it's a way of life. It's the way that you go about living your life. And if you could talk about, because you built an entire brand around this, can you talk about this no snooze mentality? And what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime no snooze is mentioned, I have to bring my partner, Claudio Valenzuela, into the conversation because it's something that we started together. And no snooze is a mindset. The first thing that you see in the morning is that snooze button. You have an opportunity to go back to sleep on your dreams and aspirations, or you can wake up and attack everything that you do. I apply that to not only my fitness journey, but me as a parent, me in business, me as a podcaster, me as a motivator, my faith journey. Everything falls under that no snooze mindset. So it was very easy when I was able to come up with that concept that it's a one-stop shop for all things success and achieving your dreams.
Okay, thank you. So take me back to, because at some point you had a pivot or you changed. We all do. We have these epiphanal moments. Do you recall when you realized, okay, and it became this mantra for your life, no snooze, but where you didn't reach over and hit the snooze button and you said, okay, I'm going down a different path. I'm going down a different road. This just happens to be the mantra, that is very, it has, great brand to it. But when was that?
Well, it's funny. So the original concept of No Snooze was actually not No Snooze. It
Okay.
was fitness and finance.
Okay.
So you talk about pivoting. So there was an extreme pivot very early on, but we quickly realized that we were not the fittest nor the richest. So we didn't feel as though we were credible enough to talk about that. But we were certainly credible enough to talk about overcoming adversity with all the things that I've been through. And I remember, I've always been an early riser. I was on the golf course from the age of 12, where I caddied. And, waking up was something that I always took pride in. So I remember actually back in 2019 coming out on Snapchat, and it was like 4:45 in the morning. And I looked into the camera and I said, no snooze, baby, come on. And fitness and finance quickly went to the wayside because the people who were the early risers, they started reposting the term no snooze because they wanted to show that they were also up, not snoozing on their life. So my previous partner, I had a co-host, Mike Pirelli, for the first 150 episodes. And he was very savvy with business. And he was like, Dave, that's it. And I was like, what's it? He's like, you don't snooze on your life. That needs to be our tagline. So that was the moment of pivot that we actually, I want to say, the people told us what they wanted, right? The people who were up and attacking their day were like, I want to be a part of that. Forget the fitness and finance thing. Yeah, we talk about that, but it's about not snoozing on life. So that was the big moment of pivot there.
Can we rewind just a bit? I mean, I glazed over it in your intro, but I'm a firm believer that anybody that's not anybody, but almost anybody who is successful has had struggle, had strife. Things didn't go the way that an idyllic life would have gone, although I feel that's a benefit to somebody to be successful. Can you revisit a little bit and just talk about you growing up, talk about your relationship with your mother, talk about some of those trials and tribulations, because that's made you partly who you are today. And I think the audience would benefit because, I think everybody's got their own bag of hammers they're carrying around, right? They've all got their own bag of hammers, me included. And the more people understand that that's not abnormal and you can still be successful, I think the better. So would you be open to speaking about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm an open book. So my experience, and I will say that I'm grateful for every experience that's come my way.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while and a lot of work in therapy, specifically over the last 7 years. I'm a huge proponent of therapy and seeking out help when necessary. But I feel like as men, we just bottle up these experiences and we're not able to really articulate and process properly. Therapy really helped me do that. And I also want to preface this by my story is never to be told for people to feel bad for me. I'm extremely humbled by my experiences. And also my mother happens to be 6+ years sober now. So she's a hero of mine. And the story definitely did turn around. But growing up, there was a lot of stress and turmoil in the house. Mom was addicted to drugs and alcohol for the first 28 years of my life. I had to grow up extremely quickly. My dad always worked 2 and 3 jobs to provide for the family. Mom had jobs here and there, but she was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. And she always found a way to, cook for us and make sure that we had food on the table. But with that, there was a lot of behavioral things that were going on. And that was because my mom was typically under the influence. And I have a younger brother and sister who are 5 and 6 years younger than me. So when I was 10, having a 5 and 6-year-old, you grow up rather quickly. So I have, vivid memories of trying to protect them from the verbal abuse that was going on in the house. I'm just really trying to be their bigger brother. So fast forward, I never really knew anything was different. I thought like my family was just a loud Italian household. When someone disagrees with something, we just turn up and we get loud and we curse each other out. And then I quickly learned that was not the norm, but it was my norm. Yeah. So I say that to preface it with the stress piece, because I ended up at the age of 13 moving out of my mom's house to go live with my father. Now, that was also a very tough decision because I left my brother and sister behind, but I still had a very close relationship with them. But living with dad, like I said, he was always working. So I had to grow up even quicker in terms of learning how to take care of myself, learning how to clean up if I had people come over the house, learning how to cook for myself. My dad, my best friend in the world was the toaster oven. He would leave certain directions. He would leave some pieces of chicken in the refrigerator, and he would say, turn the toaster oven to 325 for 45 minutes. And that's how I made my meals. But along the way, I was very stressed internally. I always remember, I would say at the age of 13, 14, I started having to go to the bathroom a lot. And I knew something was up internally, but I couldn't really figure it out. So then always an athlete growing up. Basketball was my sport, but I also played football and baseball as well. In high school, I was never in great shape, but I was never in bad shape. I was about 185, 190 pounds. And one year, within 4 months of my junior year of high school, I shot all the way down to 153 pounds. So I lost 40 pounds in about 4 months, and we knew something was up.
Yeah.
And it ended up being Crohn's disease. And, I say that it ended up being that because I'm just saving time here on the story, because I was on 18 pills of prednisone a day. They had me on different steroids, colonoscopies every few months to finally figure out that it was Crohn's disease. Now, Crohn's disease is either hereditary, and there's an extreme link to stress. So, looking back, I can say, okay, well, I definitely can see where the Crohn's flare up came about. But that ended up being a great journey and a chapter in my story, because today I am extremely passionate about health, fitness, and wellness in general. It's something that I do every day. It's something that I pride myself on. But that's a little bit of the background.
Yeah. Thank you. And before we went live, I said, man, let's just take this wherever it goes. And I'm really appreciative that you brought up mental health, and men's mental health in particular. I think as men, we are raised to, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, dust off, wipe the blood off, keep going. Never at least me, encouraged, hey, explore your feelings. And why do you think, what do you think is the root of that? It's happening more now. But I think you're a little younger than I am. I'm 53. That was not the way you dealt with your feelings when I was growing up. And so I think, maybe the Gen Z, maybe a little millennial, the edge of the millennials, they've been encouraged to do that. But man, our generation, no. And it takes these kind of conversations to have men who need help to reach out for that help. And so I can only imagine you've helped other men, and your story has helped other men. What guidance would you give for somebody who is going through these struggles, and a man who is suffering in silence, which usually we do, we suffer in silence, or we take it out, verbally or emotionally on those we're closest to. How have you found that way to break through to somebody who's suffering in silence to get them to go get help?
It's a great question and great topic, something that I'm very passionate about as well. I do a lot of work. I'm a co-founder of Action Cultivates Excellence, which is a men's personal and professional development group where we believe that men are our strongest when we bridge the gap between masculinity and vulnerability. So we do a lot of work in the space, but my first thing to anybody I speak to is there has to be a self-awareness. There has to be an understanding that you want either help or you want to change. Now, without that awareness and without that self-understanding, you really can't go to the next level. That's my, again, personal opinion. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I've done a lot of work in this space. And as I shared, heavy into therapy, and therapy changed my life over the course of 7 significant years. Yeah. After the awareness piece comes community. I do not think that us men can do this alone. I do believe that we need to seek out other men who have been through or are going through some of the same struggles. I think that stems back to team sports. As a child, we were our happiest when you look at young boys playing basketball, young boys on the football field, on the soccer field, playing a team sport. We tend to lose that after we get out of college, specifically because you go on to the real world. Maybe you get into a relationship, but the friendships quickly expand, right? And there's a lot of distance between you and who you once were. So I think it's being intentional about understanding where it is that you currently are and where you want to go. But to get there, you need a strong community. And that's what we're here to obviously provide some value in that space for.
Yeah. Definitely. It's, you know what? I don't know why I'm sharing this, but when you said that about like team sports and youth, I was driving, I don't know where I was. I was driving somewhere. I was on business travel and just saw some kids, I don't know, 10, 12 years old in like an empty lot playing baseball. There's like four of them, and I thought, my gosh, you don't see that anymore because everything's so organized and it's all team based and travel
Yep.
and parent, and just to see these four young kids out there making up their own rules, governing themselves, it filled me with joy to see that because that's how you start to relate to other people without all the parental stuff and competition and all that. And there's a lot of that missing today. There's a lot
Mhm.
of that missing today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will also add,
Yeah.
I think there's a piece to where sometimes us men are just not comfortable, and that's okay. And I think it's okay not to be okay, and I think it's okay to struggle. But if you're not looking to get involved in a community, something that I did, which is a huge reason why we started our podcast, is podcasting also changed my life. I used to go into the gym every single day and listen to rap music until I quickly found my life falling apart. I was becoming a product of what the music was talking about, getting attention from women, spending a lot of money, buying unnecessary things, drinking a lot of alcohol, the typical stuff that you hear. So I knew that I wanted more for my life. I knew that I wanted to be better, not only personally, but also professionally. So I made the decision one day, and I'll never forget it. I put on an Ed Milet, Tony Robbins podcast, and that podcast changed my life. I every single day began to consume 1 hour to 1.5 hours of personal professional development content. And not only did I begin to consume the content while I was in the gym, but I would also take little notes and begin to implement the small actionable steps that they would talk about in the podcast. Um, and from there, I began to what's called habit stacking. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, but I developed a very strong morning routine, and I began to change my life. But the catalyst to changing my life was a simple action, right? It wasn't going to therapy and putting all these hours of work in. It was me strategically turning off the rap music and turning on a personal professional development podcast. And I just want to make that clear,
Yeah.
because sometimes I forget to talk about that piece.
No, it's funny. I never listened to a podcast in my life until somebody sent me an Ed Milet
Yep.
podcast. That's too funny. Yeah. This was like back in 2019. This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. Let's talk about your morning routine. There are so many schools of thought on this. I've heard everything from, you wake up, you work out, cold plunge, infrared sauna, this, that, to Gary Vee says, who's very successful. I get up, I go to the bathroom, I check my phone, I'm out the door, and so it's different for everybody, but I would love to know what's really worked for you. And again, you've talked and helped so many other men do that. What have you seen? If there's a thread, if there's a common thread that goes through a morning routine, what would that be?
Yeah, I do believe that you will be at your most successful place when you develop a routine. Now, that doesn't have to be the most stringent routine ever. It doesn't have to consist of 10 to 15 things, but I do think consistency and discipline are the two most important skills in life.
Yeah.
The best advice that I can give, the best advice that I've ever received is that if you want to be taken seriously in life, be consistent. Period. Now, for me, it's deeper than that. So I do come from a family of addicts. not only mom, but I also have other family members as well. So I do believe that I do have that addictive personality in me. So I choose to channel that addictive mentality into positive things that are going to benefit my life. So every day I wake up at the same time, and that's typically 4:45 a.m. The alarm goes off. If I'm lucky, I'll tell you this: on the days that I do have my daughter, I'm a single parent household. I can sleep until 5:15, but I still get up at that time. So that's the first thing. Set a time frame for yourself. I get up, I make my bed, I throw in a AirPod, and I listen to 30 minutes of Joel Osteen. One of my personal goals is to really become a little bit more familiar with just faith in general and developing my own relationship with a higher power. So that's been extremely helpful. I hydrate with 45 ounces of lemon and salt water. I drink my coffee. I meditate for 15 to 20 minutes. And then I am off to the gym. Regardless if I have my daughter or not, I'll drop her off and then go to the gym. And then I sauna and take a cold shower. So that's the structure of my day. I'm not too stringent on the time frames that I put into everything, but I make sure that I habit stack. Habit stacking for me is also something that really did change my life, as I mentioned previously, because even when you're down and you're having a negative day or a negative moment, it's very different than you having a negative life, right? So having small positive habits that you implement and you stack on top of each other day after day is something that's critical to your well-being, because now I'm much more likely to take on life as it comes. I'm a deputy commissioner in a very affluent town where we also serve very poverty stricken individuals. So we see the scope of all walks of life, which is great, but it's also very eye-opening. So there's a lot of things that come my way as soon as 9 o'clock hits. So I have to be very particular about my time in the morning. And I wake up at that time just so I can attack life before life attacks me.
Yeah. I would love to take just a sidetrack here on being a single parent. I think I was a single parent for 4 years, and to me, I would always look at, especially moms, I guess less so than dads, but I would always see moms as single parents and just think, man, where do you get the energy to go to work, to do this, to make the meals, to pack the lunches, to do? And then I became a single parent, and then you realize there's no choice. Like there's no, you can, or if you want to, you can, or you don't. No, you have to do it. You have to do it. There's no choice. And what it taught me was, it taught me to be incredibly selfless as I went about my day versus, what do I need? Okay, well, that's great, but it starts with the kids. I had two. So it starts with the kids. What do they need first? After their needs are taken care of, then I can focus on me. I would appreciate you speaking to being a single parent and what that's taught you and the lessons you've learned from that.
Absolutely. Happy to share that. I have been a single parent household, and I use that term because I am in a very healthy co-parenting relationship. And I do want to make that clear because I do know single moms and single dads that, for 24 hours, 7 days a week, they have their children. So my agreement is 50%. So that, I just want to bring clarity to that, but it's still not easy by any means.
And just in case my ex-wife is listening, who I have a great relationship with too, I second that. I have a great co-parenting relationship, and she is wonderful and was wonderful before we both remarried. So yes, I'm going to get that in before I forget.
There you go. Yeah. No, absolutely. But I think that's important because you hear in society today too many people bashing their ex-husband, ex-wife, and there's just no need for that. And also in a personal professional development space, I would feel that would be so phony of me to be bad-mouthing somebody who also takes care of my child. So I'm very grateful to her. We both moved on and we're happy, but I just want to make that clear and set the stage with that. But, although it's challenging, I take a lot of pride in being a dad. It's my biggest joy in life. And although I have, some accomplishments that you've mentioned prior, being a father happens to be my favorite title by far. And something that I've leaned on is to always think about the direct impact that my actions have on my daughter.
Mm.
Now, I say that, but I also know damn well that there are plenty of times that I'm very impatient with my daughter. So I don't want to make it seem like
Sure.
I've mastered that, because
Sure.
that's one thing that kids will do to you, and they will test you and test your patience. And I fail a lot when it comes to that,
Yep.
but I'm aware of it, and I try to do the best thing possible. Something that's really helped, though, is I've just included my daughter in everything. I mean, she's only 4 now, but she was 2 when the separation initially happened. And right from the start, I would say the hardest thing as a man is learning how to take care of a young female, learning how to clean their private parts properly, learning to teach them how to clean their own private parts,
Yep.
how to brush their hair coming out of the shower. You know, those are the types of things I don't think you can ever like read about. You just have to
Sure.
kind of experience.
Yep.
But I will say, when it comes to the cooking and the cleaning, parents have tough decisions to make. But for me, I always choose the harder thing. And the harder thing is to cook the steak and the salad versus going to McDonald's. The harder thing is cleaning up with your child, because the easier thing is to just leave it a mess until they leave and go with the other parent. But what I always did from the age of 2 is to include my daughter in that. It takes a lot of time. But now we're to the point that my daughter, she wakes up with me. She makes the bed, because making the bed is a healthy habit. And she says that to me. We cook together, we clean together, and we prepare for the next day together. Again, she's only 4, but she goes in her drawer and she takes out her shorts now that it's beautiful weather in New York,
Yeah.
and she'll pick out a t-shirt that absolutely doesn't match, so I'll switch it. She'll pick out a nice, beautiful headband, and we lay it out, right on the side of the bed. So then when we get up, we say our gratitude prayer together, and we get ready for the day. And there's days that she wakes up and she's like, no, 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. And I'm like, I'll give you your 2 minutes some days, but then some days we're in an extreme rush, because you know how parents are always in a rush, and she can't get the 2 minutes. But it's a great balance of trying to figure that stuff out. But the one thing that I would say to parents is to be more inclusive with your children and be intentional about being inclusive. And now I would say my thought process is a little bit different, because she'll ask me to push her on the swing, and my initial reaction is like, no, I don't want to do that. But then I'm like, wait, I paid $2,500 for that. I'm going to push you on that swing.
Exactly. I love the word you used, intentional. I think it's too easy to go through life and let life happen to us versus being intentional about how we want to interact with our children, how we want to guide our children, teach our children. And we talked about earlier. I was at the dentist early this morning, and we're talking about our children. And I said, this sounds terrible as a parent for coming out of my mouth, but I mean it in the most genuine way. Is I wish struggle on my children, and they're 23 and 20 now. I wish struggle on them, not for their whole life, but to build character, to build traits, to build resilience. And I think as parents, it's so easy to want to save our children, to clean up for them. As I'll clean up for them, or wait till they're gone, and all, because it is faster, but it's not better. And so you have to be very intentional how you go about that. So I love that you touched on that. Let's switch gears a bit here. I'd love to hear about you currently serve as the deputy commissioner of Greenboro, New York. And so as a leader, how do you ensure, because you've already alluded to it this podcast, you've got some of the wealthiest of the wealthy there, and you've got some of the disenfranchised. How do you cater and ensure that all the entire community is served?
Yeah, I love talking about leadership. It happens to be one of the hardest things in the world, but it is something that, again, I take great pride in being a leader. I'm a leader of my own life, but one word comes to mind when I think of leadership, and that's relationships. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how much money you don't have. If you can't treat people with respect, with kindness, with compassion, have an understanding, and a little bit of empathy at times, I don't think you can get anywhere as a leader. So regardless of anyone's, financial situation, I always lead with the relationships, and something that I do not only with my community members, but also with my team. And I have a direct team of 25 full-time supervisors that are under me. And I pride myself on positive interactions within a relationship. And now what I mean by that is I take the time to develop personal relationships. Every single full-time employee has 30 minutes a month with me one-on-one. And we break that meeting out. And again, it's 30 minutes. And this is something that I did not adopt myself. I stole it from somebody. Shout out to Howard Schultz. I believe I don't know if he's the former CEO of Starbucks, but I have Starbucks in my hand.
Yeah, there we go.
He may even be current. There were two
I think
Howards.
he was. He left and came back. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. There you go. So this was something that Howard Schultz was very adamant about in building his empire. And I think he did 15-minute meetings. I was like, I'm not that efficient yet. I need 30 minutes.
Sure.
So I break the meeting up into 10-minute increments. And the first 10 minutes is just personal. Anything going on in your life that you want to share, I should know about. How's your family? The next 10 minutes is a recap of the month that just previously happened and how we plan to be efficient and effective for the following month. And then the final 10 minutes is me asking you what I can do to make your job a little bit easier. Now, in the first year, that's only, 12 meetings on the year. But when you do that for 4 or 5 years, you begin to gain a significant amount of time with each employee. And leadership takes time. I think some leaders, they misstep by walking into a place and just cleaning house. My approach is to sit back and begin to understand what's currently going on. Because if I don't understand what's currently going on, I don't know how I can ever make something better. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that you can learn from history. I have employees who have been in that town for 30 years. They may not be the highest ranking official, but they have a deep understanding and knowledge of how things work and how to do their job to an elite level. So I learn from them. And I think that's important in leadership. I think everybody can learn from everybody else. I think people go wrong because they put themselves on a pedestal and they think in a hierarchy situation. And although there is a hierarchy in terms of an organizational flow chart, everybody's still a human being at the end of the day. So I really pride myself on deep relationships.
Yeah. Really, if I can paraphrase what you said, 30 minutes a month, 4 years straight, it's consistency. It's the word that you started off this podcast with. It's consistency and doing that again and again and again. And that's the hallmark of a leader. So some of you are listening on Apple or Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Dave, but if you're listening, what you can't see is Dave's pretty built dude and not a guy you'd mess with in a dark alley. Big smile, very, very big, joyous smile, but not a dude you'd mess with. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One, what do you attribute to your physical and your physical well-being? And then I'm going to ask you a question on the back end of that. But and consistency, I know is that, but just speak overall. If you were to give advice to someone who is not in your kind of shape and wants to start that journey.
Well, I could give you, my personal experience first, and then I can give you a tip or two. But it really started and it changed for me. And I believe I had a leg up with the diagnosis of the Crohn's disease early on, because I don't know any other 17-year-old boy or girl that is walking around with a food diary and writing down the food that they ate and then how long it took before they were in the bathroom. So what I did was, excuse me, let me just readjust here. Yeah, was exactly that. And I did that for a period of a year, to where I created my own diet and understanding, because I simply did not believe the doctors. They told me that I was going to live with Crohn's disease for the rest of my life. And the doctor that was telling me that, no disrespect, knowledgeable guy, but I did not want to look like that man. Yeah. So I took things into my own hands, and my father was very instrumental in that, in helping me cook and helping me prepare. But I learned, and I read books to really understand what it is that the American diet is feeding us. And really what it came down to was understanding the importance of protein and healthy fats. Carbohydrates actually happen to be I don't want to say a cause of a flare-up, because you can have sweet potatoes and oatmeal that can digest okay, but predominantly for my diagnosis, carbohydrates were really a trigger for me. So the first thing was obviously understanding the diet, but I always wanted to be in shape. It used to kill me when I would be called, first I was called chubby because I was just kind of there. Yeah. I ate a lot of pasta, but I was, again, a good athlete, never fat, never skinny, just very average. And then I became extremely sick looking at 153 pounds. I stand 6'2". So that's significantly, and just for context now, I'm 240 pounds. So it's a big difference. I was obsessed with bodybuilding, with health, wellness, going into a deep space to where you can create and you can make art out of the body. So I remember being in the gym and feeling the physical pain. And I was like, wow, you can actually inflict pain on yourself. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I do mean it in a way of building mental fortitude and resilience and grit. When you say that you're going to do 10 reps in the gym and you do those 10 reps, do you have 11 in you? Do you have 12? Do you have 13? Or do you only get 9? So every day was a new journey into the gym, and I would create these fitness programs, which then later led me down the line. I did a lot of personal training for athletes for a long time as well, all throughout college and in my 20s. So it was that obsession with with that feeling and wanting to build myself up. And then finally, once I got the diet right, paired with the medication that worked for me, I began to see progress. And now the funny thing about the gym is everyone thinks it happens overnight. I'm 34 years old now, and I've been working out since I was 18 for 5, 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to get to a place to where I actually take a full day off every single week, but it doesn't happen because I'm that obsessed with just the feeling, just the feeling of an accomplishment. And I think for anybody who's really struggling, I don't think you need to do anything difficult. I think you need to find something that you like to do. And whether that's walking, jogging, taking a yoga class, swinging a kettlebell, playing basketball, something that's going to release the stress. For me, weightlifting was an opportunity to get away from the stress in the home. And that's where that deep connection happened. And then that mind-body connection took me to a spiritual place. And that's how I obviously got to, where I am today.
Yeah. And so if you're a guy, a gal, whatever, that's 60 pounds overweight, and you're like, yeah, that's great, Dave, and you look amazing, and you've been doing it for a long time, good for you. You don't understand. I'm busy. I got kids. I'm a single parent too. My job's crazy. You just don't get it. Which, it's so easy to make those excuses. What is your guidance to that person listening?
Yeah, I could sound a little robotic with this. My AV guy here, Claudio, will definitely attest to this. But you mentioned kids, and if you're a parent, right? And my question to you is, do you really care about your kids? Because right now you're 60, 70 pounds overweight. And granted, your life is hard and you don't have time. But also for you to show up for your children, for you to show up for your spouse, for you to be the most confident version of yourself, you need to make the time. And you can find 20 minutes a day to go for a walk. But also, I never look at 60 pounds, right? I look at 2 pounds a week. This is just how I break things down.
Yep.
Now, are you able to get past the week? Take it even further. Are you able to get past the day? 2 pounds in 1 week is very doable, but you also have to manage yourself, and you have to be able to make disciplined decisions, and you have to find a way to prepare your life. Now, the problem with most people is that we'll do it for a week, we'll lose the 2 pounds. We'll do it for another week, we lost 4 pounds. Then life happens, then we put the 4 pounds back on, and now we have to start over. Whereas if you break things down in a daily and weekly increment, you're able to achieve things at a much higher success level. My thing is always breaking things down to the tangible. SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and a timeline. Set a goal, put it out there, but also make sure that you're measuring it consistently versus looking at the long-term goal.
This segment is sponsored by Beamlight Sauna Franchising. Are you looking to take control of your destiny and own your own business? Do you want a great brand in a rapidly growing market? Well, Beamlight Sauna is a nationwide health and wellness franchise with amazing opportunities in select markets. you can bring the power of infrared sauna and red light therapy to your community while you build a thriving business. Beamlight Sauna offers support that includes site selection, build out, even pre-launch programs and turnkey marketing so you can open your studio with a large recurring revenue member base. To learn more about business ownership and franchise opportunities in the fast-growing health and wellness space, go to beamlightsauna.com. That's BEEM lightsauna.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more. I'm going to ask you something that I think you can answer that will really, really benefit the audience. So again, I've said, you look like this Adonis. You got 25 direct.
Thank you, Roger.
You got 25 direct reports. You've been successful at a young age. You've overcome some, adversity as a young person. I can just tell you're a great father because I watched how you talked about being a father and you lit up when you talked about it. Like you literally glowed when you talked about being a father. I could see it through the screen. But this is where I think people can learn. What do you still struggle with? What do you not have figured out yet? What can you share with the audience that, hey, it's okay, man. This doesn't all just click into place. What is it that you still struggle with?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think people get shocked by this, but the amount of negative thoughts that I have throughout one day might be alarming to some. Seriously. And again, but now I've taken that and I always go to they call me the big science. And by I've coined myself the big science. Okay, Roger. So we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. And I'm sure this is a statistic that you're familiar with, but your listeners may not be. So every single day we have up to 60,000 thoughts, both subconscious and conscious thoughts. Now, right off the bat, 80% of those conscious and subconscious thoughts are negative thoughts. Now, that's not a bad thing because that's actually the brain going into a protective mode, right? When you get stressed, your brain goes into protection. So instead of turning that, turning the wheel into a tree when something is in front of you, your brain, without you thinking about it, automatically jerks the wheel back. So that's just a statistic that I'm very familiar with. But now, how do you combat that? And the way that I combat it is once I know that negative thought pops up in my head, like, oh God, I got to go to work today. I have to work out today. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I take a positive action against the thought. And then what I found is over time, those negative thoughts become just quick 5-second reels in my head to where it's like, okay, I acknowledge this thought. You're there, but you're just one of the 60,000 negative thoughts that are coming on a daily basis. So I take a positive action, I put on my shoes, and I get out the door. Small positive actions have really begun to change, and that's very similar to the habit stacking thing. And then when you are consistent with that, now I just laugh at them. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like what other negative thought will come up today? I just spoke at a conference for a pretty large company. They had 486 employees there, and it was a very good experience. But right before it, in my head, my brain was telling me that I was going to fumble my words. I was going to have a terrible speech. And all I did was I sat there and I repeated the opposite out loud. I went through my notes and I made sure that I took that positive action. And I ended up getting a standing ovation. Now, I don't know if they knew that I was having those negative thoughts before and they wanted to make me feel good, but I think it went well. And I think it actually works, but you have to have a strategy in place. And that's the thing now. For everything in my life, I do realize that there's another way out. And I believe that everything is a choice in life. And you can choose to sit back and, snooze on your life, for a lack of a better word. But you also have an extreme opportunity. It's a rare, rare time in 2024 when you're listening to this podcast. You can go out and achieve anything that you put your mind to. Now, again, I do believe that there are certain limitations. I don't think that I can go out and be the best singer in front of millions, but what I can do is practice that skill and become really confident in singing.
Yep.
So I think it's definitely a battle, but I would say that I have more negative thoughts than most people would think when they were to just look at me and hear some accomplishments that I've had thus far.
One, thank you for sharing that. And as you know, 99% of all the crap we worry about never happens.
Yep.
But it is a defense mechanism. Our ancestors programmed our DNA that way so that they could survive, to what's the worst case scenario. But I'm going to double tap on what you said. I don't know, 30 episodes ago or 40 episodes ago on this podcast, on the ThriveMore podcast, I had an ex-con on who got out, turned his life around, and he said something in passing that hit me like a freight train. And you've just hit it again. And I thought, man, I need to write that down in my journal and put it on my iPhone. So it's like, he said, which is really, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but his words were, yeah, a positive thought won't overcome a negative thought. Only a positive action will overcome that negative thought. Because we always think, if you're thinking negative, well, just think something positive. That doesn't change anything. It's taking a positive action, physically doing something or saying something out loud. Mm-hmm. That's how you overcome that. And it's great that you literally just double down on that. I love it. Love it. All right. I always ask the same 3 questions to end every podcast. Mm-hmm. And the first one is, I'm an avid reader, and people know that. I devour self-help, motivational. I love business biographies, business books. What is a book that you've read? Could be recently, it could be 20 years ago, that you read it, Dave, and you said, I am not thinking about this the same again. Like, this guy or gal really connected some synapses in my brain, man. What book and an author could you recommend?
I mean, so there's a ton of books that I've read over the course of the past, 10 to 12 years specifically. I read 10 pages a day of a personal professional development book. I love Ed Milet. I love Tim Grover. I love Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, John Gordon, Tony Robbins. The list goes on and on and on. But the one book that I am currently reading, and I wish that I picked this up much earlier, but there was an extreme resistance for whatever reason, and this may shock people, is the Bible. And the Bible happens to be the best personal and professional development book I've ever read in my life. Any life lesson that you can ever think of, I mean, that's why this thing is 1,900 pages, but any lesson you think of or anything that's ever been put out into the world is actually right there in the Bible. And again, I'm not the most religious by any means. I'm a very faithful guy, and I have a deep relationship with a higher power. I'm not encouraging anybody in any which direction, but for me, I wish I picked up this Bible a little bit earlier. And specifically, the version that I read is called the Every Man's Bible, and it's a New Testament Bible. I believe it's NIV, to where it gives perspective on the male outlook of life. So the adversities that men face and the challenges that men face along the way. It's a book that I highly recommend, regardless of anyone's faith and background, because it's not your typical, it doesn't have the typical verbiage that you would associate with the actual Bible. I've looked at biblical things before and been like, I don't understand what that means. I can't read that. Whereas this is very strategic with breaking it down to just understanding life. And it's the best book that I've ever read. Again, I'm currently reading it now, but it's something that I will not only finish, but I'll go back and read again because there's so many different interpretations of it.
Love it. Love it.
What are you currently reading?
I am reading, I just picked this up. I'm a big Patrick Bet-David fan because I love how he just takes a stand and he's passionate about what he believes in. He doesn't care if you believe it or not, but he's put a stake in the ground. And I read his first book, Your Next 5 Moves, which is great. But I'm currently reading Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And it's a different book than I thought it was going to be. And it's more about, it's kind of the Kobe Bryant, the Michael Jordan. We've all, not all, but most of us have watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And you realize he chose his enemies. And if he didn't have one, he would create an enemy so that he could get fired up and beat whoever it was that was standing between him and that championship. And Patrick Bet-David uses this in business and other areas around, choose your enemies so that you can rally against, and not that you have to hate that person or you're trying to put them out of business, but that so you can motivate yourself. It's I'm only about halfway through it, but yeah, that's my latest one so far.
I love that. Follow-up question to that. Do
Yeah.
you read it with Patrick Bet-David's accent?
God, that's so funny. You know, I do. If I've listened to their podcasts, it's so every book. If I've listened to their podcast or I know them, or I read it in their voice.
I do the same thing. That's why I'm asking. Yeah. That's awesome.
That's funny. So second to last question, you know, you're only 34. You've already lived an amazing life, and you're going to live an amazing life. But let's say we get to the end of your journey here on earth, and we're at your funeral, and you're looking down from above, and there's a loved one that's reading your eulogy. And that loved one, can only choose 3 descriptors, 3 different words. It doesn't have to be a phrase, but just 3 words that come to their mind when they think about the impact you had on them and the world. What 3 words, Dave, do you hope they choose to use to describe the life that you lived?
I love that question. So 4 came to mind. I'll give you.
Give me 4. Give me 4.
I'll give you the top 3, but it's loving, kind, and consistent. The 4th one would be undeniable. And undeniable popped up because that happened to be my word of the year for 2024. For a long time, I was very good in the fitness space, in my fitness journey, but I struggled with my personal relationships, and I quickly found that I was not undeniable in all facets of my life. And the individuals that I look up to, whether it's my deceased grandfather, my father, my mother, Ed Milet, Tony Robbins, Michael Jordan, they had the ability to be undeniable in multiple facets of their life. Jordan got himself into some issues, but we'll leave that alone. You get the gist of what I'm saying. I find it extremely rare these days to be undeniable in all aspects of your life, as a parent, in your health journey, in business, in your personal relationships, and the people closest to you. What are they saying about you? This is a phenomenal question, and something that I think I need to think about more often throughout my days when I am struggling, because it's a deep question. And if you have the ability to regroup, refocus, and recenter your thoughts, which I like to believe that I do have, in those moments where I am impatient with my daughter, if I were to think about this question here, am I loving? Am I kind? Am I undeniable? Am I consistent? I think my actions would change along the way. So those would be my 4 words. So I didn't answer your question.
No, you did. You actually answered it. Well, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but you answered it in a way that is beautiful, because I was asked the same question. I'm doing this 1-year-long executive development program, and you have to get accepted in. And I had to do this interview, and one of the questions was that question. And I answered it, but I left that interview and I thought, well, wait a second. If those are my 3 words, then why am I worried about anything else other than fulfilling those 3 words every day of my life? And like you said, when things get tough, I just need to go back to those 3 words. And we get wrapped around the axle around so much silly stuff. But that question boils it down to, we're not going to be here forever. How do you want to be remembered? Well, then get busy getting busy with those 3 words, right? Yeah, that's why I incorporated that question. And then we're really second to last, because the last one, I want people to figure out how they can learn how they can find you and follow you. But if you had a magic wand and you wave that sucker tonight before we all go to bed, and when we wake up, the world is different. The world is different in one way. Like, you can change the world, the way the world operates, the way people are, however that is, but just one way. You wave that thing tonight, we wake up tomorrow. How is the world different according to Dave?
Another great, deep question.
I think I got asked that question too. I think that's why these 2 questions are here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. It forces you to definitely think. And, when I'm asked these questions, I always self-reflect. That's immediately what I do. Like, where can I improve in my life is the first thing that's coming to mind. What do I struggle with? And I think the immediate change that I would make would be to provide more rest to society. to implement a 4-day work week versus a 5-day work week. And I say that because I think the typical American works very hard. Now, we might not be working in the things that are going to make us the most money, but as a society, we work very hard emotionally, mentally. I mean, even the jobs that we put in. I mean, to make America go round, to make this society work, there's a lot of work that happens on a day-to-day basis. And I think and I know I need to allow myself to rest a little bit more. This is something that's biblical too. And again, this is just from my understanding and from my reading, but on the 7th day, we're supposed to be resting. And there's a reason why that happened. God made the earth in 6 days. He had 7, but he chose to rest on that 7th day. And I think rest, especially in the entrepreneurial space, is something that's frowned upon. It's something that I frowned upon. It's something that I still tend to frown upon, because I'll say that I'm going to rest and then I'll go for a leisure walk and end up running 5 miles.
Sure.
So I get that. And I think that's a problem, though. And I think to reach the pinnacle of our success, we have to find that balance. I think there's a great duality in understanding how to maximize, your output, but also to prioritize your well-being and your safety, your emotional safety, your emotional wellness. So that would be something that I would change. Go to a 4-day work week, 3-day weekend for everybody. Dave Reggina
run for office, brother.
I think that might get me my presidential nomination.
Nomination. There. I love it. Hey, most important question, man. You're just an awesome dude. How can people follow you? Where do they connect with you? How do they find you? And just be part of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And Roger, I just want to say thank you again for bringing me on your platform. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope to meet you in person one day. Yeah. I hope to get familiar with you guys a little bit more. But thank you again. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. You can find me on Instagram at Dave Reg, DaveRegg. You can find our podcasts on all audio platforms. No Snooze Podcast. We're on YouTube as well. And really any follow, any connection, we're extremely grateful for it. We built this from nothing, from the ground up, and we've got over 40,000 people, on our Instagram page. We've been streamed in over 75 countries, and it's a journey that I'm extremely proud of. I don't say it enough. And to also my partner, Claudio Valenzuela here, extremely grateful for what he does behind the scenes. But we're grateful for every connection that comes our way. So I'm happy to connect with your audience. And again, Roger, thank you so much for having me on.
No, you bet. We'll put that in the show notes too, so people can just click right there to find you. And I'll tell you, my day's better off having spent an hour with you. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.